people are out there feeling magical and mysterious whilst tying their old sock onto a bloody tree where it can trap a bird or hold fungal spores against a branch and infect the tree. Just think a bit, people. And welcome to Grumpy Old Crone with me, Annie, where I'm going to be moaning about things that don't really matter too much in the pagan and witchcraft communities for about half an hour, give or take a little bit. So, as you'll know, if you dropped by before, I split these videos into 3 parts. So let's dive into part 1, existing whilst witchy. Now, this subject was suggested by one of my lovely cronies, and they suggested talking about the aesthetics of hairlessness. But I also think there's a whole lot to be looked at regarding image and how we feel about our faith, religion, and our physicality as well. So, I know that everybody's hormones work differently when they come under sudden change, but for me, one of the great joys of transitioning into my crone years was that my legs seemed to suddenly change from, very short Yeti mode into think of the money that you're saving by not buying razors mode. And honestly, I may be a dried up old prune, but now I'm an oddly hairless dried up old prune, which is a very strange thing to be confessing on a YouTube in front of a few thousand people, I can honestly say. Ho-hum, oh well, on we go. I've never been somebody who's been overly preoccupied with how I look for the longest time. I've not really had enough money to be particularly vain. I box dyed my hair and I occasionally bought makeup, which I rarely wear and tends to go out of date before I use it up anyway. But somewhere along the line, I absorbed the idea that I absolutely had to have hairless legs and underarms or nobody would ever love me. Now, I don't remember anyone actually telling me that, but I guess I just sort of picked it up from various media over the years, and like the vast majority of women, I spent my mother years shaving, plucking and otherwise attempting to marshal my hair growth in line with what society expected of me. I mean, looking back at that now with my crone head on, I wonder why I bloody well bothered, honestly, but any potential partner who judged me by whether I had naturally occurring hair in a naturally occurring place was not actually a potential partner now, were they? They were someone expecting me to once again fall into line with something that they found acceptable or not. And you know what? Sod that for a game of soldiers, my friends. Sod it. I've got no time for that. I now tend to think of natural hair growth as a slightly rebellious act. We choose how we want to look and where we want to expend our energy. And anyone who disagrees with that, frankly, can get stuffed. I went to a festival recently and there was a young person there wearing a lovely and elaborate costume that had a skirt which exposed their lower legs. Now this person was presenting as female, and when I noticed they had very hairy legs, my immediate reaction was, go them. I mean, sod what society tells you. You do you. I mean, I didn't mention it to him because having random middle-aged women commenting on your body hair is more than slightly weird, I feel. But I really, really liked their disregard for what society expected of them and prioritising their own comfort. And I feel that this whole thing has real relevance to the socially accepted vision of how to physically be a witch these days. I still feel that it's a very binary choice and social media plays into it hugely. Our choices would now appear to be warty old woman, possibly green, or glamorous, sexy, flirty young girl doing perfectly curated TikTok spells whilst wearing wafty chiffon. A couple of years back, there seemed to be this trend for young women to make the "A Day in the Life of a Witch" videos, which features them springing out of perfectly made beds and spending several hours journaling in the sunshine whilst being inspired by crystals and stirring their coffee with a spoon that had a pentacle on it in a clockwise. They may have then gone rollerblading whilst incanting rhyming couplets and meditating until a perfect sunset on the beach. All whilst perfectly shaved and made up and coiffed. And speaking personally here, this witch rolls out of bed groaning with the alarm, tries to do something creative with bacon for Mr. Grumpy Old Crone's breakfast, and then drinks an immoderate amount of caffeine before even contemplating underwear, let alone journaling on the inner spirituality of life. But, equally, I'm not a warty old woman with scoliosis and a personality disorder either. Don't come at me in the comments about that. I mean, I hate that social media wants to force us into these conveniently labelled little boxes. Young witch, old witch, male witch, female witch, full-time witch, hobby witch. It's all bollocks, isn't it? I actually think that the human desire to label people is responsible for so much of what is going wrong in the world today. We seem to have forgotten that people are, at the end of the day, just people. People can be both good and bad, depending on how you catch them. But extremist politics have forced us into these binary camps that just drive me crazy. I was reading something the other day and the person was saying some truly unhinged things about gender identity, and I disagreed violently. I went charging to their page to see if they were posting pictures of flags on lampposts, and if you don't know what I mean, consider yourself lucky. Let's just say that it's the new face of nationalism in the UK. But when I got there, I pulled up short. They had a whole load of posts decrying the genocide in Gaza. Oh. And they hated Reform UK, the new nationalist political party in the UK. Double. Ooh. Both of those are stances that I actually agree with, but I hated their stance on gender politics. Am I mean to like them? Am I mean to hate them? What am I mean to do? But I mean, honestly, the thing that I feel we've lost track of is that people are layered. They can be both wrong and right at the same time, sometimes about the same subject, depending upon where the viewer is looking from. We want life to be absolute, but it isn't. People aren't absolute. We're messy, complicated, bad and good all at the same time. We can choose how we present, and the fact that we might or might not choose to shave our sodding legs is nobody's business but our own. And all that being said though, I'm never going to tolerate Nazis, so... Right, anyway, that got a bit more political than perhaps I intended. Sorry. So we are now going to move on to the main crux of today's video, and that is the meat and 2 potatoes of today. I've spoken a few times about how I think we should stay away from closed practices and try to centre ourselves on the land that we live on, rather than searching back through family trees for some kind of genetic justification for a path that we want to walk. Now, quite a few people had a real problem with this. The idea that they couldn't just cherry pick the bits of practice that they wanted made them very angry. And when I told people to get in contact with the land that they lived on, even more people got both puzzled and angry. There were people who didn't actually like where they lived. I mean, please don't mix up politics and the land. The land doesn't care about politics, it just wants to be looked after. There were also people who felt very sensitive to the fact that the land that they lived on had been stolen by their ancestors. And once again, I understand that, but once again, I argue that the land doesn't care about politics, it just wants to be looked after. But also, let's not forget that the people who were victims of that theft and oppression could really do with a voice and consideration, completely independent of witchcraft, please. So anyway, yeah. But most of all, there were people who were just really confused about what to do and how to do it. And this is a direct result of whole social and ethnic groups having been completely and systematically cut off from their cultural traditions. And we all have an absolute right to be very bloody angry about that, I feel. So as we think about all of that, first of all, I should point out that it's really important to remember that I am just one person with an opinion. The fact that I've got a YouTube channel shouldn't give any more or less weight to my argument than anybody else. There are alternative viewpoints on many things. I think anyone who's seen, more than a couple of my videos will understand that I'm not an absolute kind of a person. I actively enjoy people challenging me on my views, and I'm more than ready to change my mind if an argument is well put and has logical merit. I'm a great believer in that rarest of things, logic within spirituality. But having said that I'm not a big fan of absolutes, I want to talk about, well, something that I genuinely believe is an utter absolute, and that is the modern practice of cluty trees is utterly wrong, and if you thoughtlessly engage in it, you are completely, inarguably, unequivocally wrong, and you should be ashamed of yourself, and you should stop it immediately. There we go. That's an absolute from me, and I am not backpedaling on that one at all. Feel free to come at me about it. I'll make a video about it, but probably not before I finish the video on that complete idiot on the Were You Born a Witch video, who spent a good many hours arguing with people who were considerably better educated than they were about their unshakable confidence in the fact that hell was a series of small prison cells exactly 32 miles beneath the surface of the earth. I'm really looking forward to making that one. When I've got it done, you'll find it on my Patreon for all paid levels. I call these videos the From the Vaults ones, so look forward to that. Anyway, as I said, cluty trees. Now, I'm pretty sure as I say this, there'll be a number of people saying, well, what the hell is a cluty tree and why is she getting so wound up about it? And that's fair enough. So let's do Cluty Trees 101. Feel free to skip ahead if you need to. Now, the word cluty is a Scottish word that historically, and also in modern day language, means cloth or fabric. I was at a party recently where a Scottish friend gave the host a cluty dumpling, which is a sweet boiled dumpling wrapped and cooked in a cheesecloth to give it like a characteristic round shape. Imagine like old-fashioned Christmas puddings. So it's a modern word as well, but a cluty dumpling and a cluty tree are very different things. How so? So the cloth or cluty, as referenced in a cluty dumpling, is a covering. Referenced in a conversation about a cluty tree, it's a strip of cloth that is tied around a specific tree as an offering to the genius loci or the spirit of the place. Cluty trees are very often sited near cluty wells or other sacred sites. If you've been to Avebury or Glastonbury, both sacred sites accepted by a wide range of traditions, you may well have seen trees decorated with strips of cloth. At Glastonbury, the favoured tree is located at the bottom of the main path up to the Tor. At Avebury, it's on the mound opposite the so-called Devil's Chair. There's an argument about that naming, but we'll have it another day, right? But there are cluty trees all over the British Isles. Whether mankind has thought there was a decent chance of petitioning the divine, then people have been tying bits of cloth to trees there, I reckon. So if it's rooted in my culture and in my land, which it is, why am I so angry about it? And the answer is simple. 200 years ago, say, when someone tied a cluty to a tree and made a wish or petition the divine, the cloth would have been wool, linen, silk, nettle, possibly cotton, depending on the historic date and availability. The cluty would be tied, the wish or petition would be made, and the cloth would stay there through wind, rain, sun, and animal predation, and eventually would rot or drop off or get stolen to line a bird's nest. The tree would be free of it, and the natural process of degradation allowed the cluty to be returned to the earth. But nowadays, that is not what people are leaving at cluty trees. Nowadays, people are tying brightly coloured polyester and nylon ribbons and strips of polyester cloth to trees. Do you know how long it takes a strip of linen to start decomposing and breaking back into nutrients that the soil can utilise to feed the tree? Starts at about 2 weeks. Have a guess how long it takes polyester or nylon to break down. Between 20 and 200 years. And when it does break down, polyester breaks down into bloody microplastics, which are like a cancer on the environment. They do not fertilise the trees that they are tied onto. They just slowly destroy them. Because what happens to a cluty tree with a plastic cluty tied onto it? Well, depending on how tightly it's tied, it could simply be absorbed into the tree, or it could contribute to weighing it down, damaging the tree branch, or it could simply obstruct the flow of nutrients along the branch and kill the tree, or at least the branch. Also, after a while, cluty trees bound with plastic fabric don't look like magical, wonderful places. They look like fly tipping zones. I mean, I don't know if that phrase translates well into other countries, but over here, fly tipping is just throwing away all your unsightly rubbish in an unsuitable place, not the designated rubbish dump or recycling facility. Now, while researching this video, I discovered a blog post about clearing up at the Munlochy Cluty Well. People had hung up bras, filthy trainers, even a filthy old Barney the dinosaur toy. It looked awful. How anyone could think it was magical was beyond me. But happily, the local residents took it into their own hands to go and clear it up. They left anything that was biodegradable, but removed the plastic and the filth. And they removed 50, that's 50 bin bags of plastic rubbish that had been left as some kind of magical offering. And the ironic thing is that the Munlochy Cluty Well legend holds that to be cured, you should dip your cluty into the well water, tie it around the tree, and as it dries and then decomposes, your illness will disappear. But if your cluty can't decompose, surely that means you won't ever be cured? That can't possibly be what people are hoping for, can it? And it's another one of those classic cases of not thinking the magical practice through properly. If they'd bothered to do the research, they'd know how it worked. Energetically, certainly, and made sure that biodegradable offerings were what was left. But these people thought no further than, tie something around a tree. Magic! And it frustrates me so much because not only will it not work, it's also actively harming nature, and people are out there feeling magical and mysterious whilst tying their old sock onto a bloody tree where it can trap a bird or hold fungal spores against a branch and infect the tree. Just think a bit, people. It isn't hard to follow the logic of cluty through and do something that is both respectful and won't harm wildlife or the environment. Have I tied things onto cluty trees? Yes, I have. Was it a plastic ribbon? No, it was not. If I know I'm going to be visiting a cluty tree or a well, then I always make sure I have a length of homespun 100% wool on me. I'll tie that loosely around a branch and do my working. It will decompose completely within a year or two, but probably won't make it that long before a bird takes it off to line a nest the following spring. I use hemp twine in my garden for similar reasons. Why introduce plastic if you don't have to? And as for people allowing children to leave plastic models and toys at the base of trees, I absolutely understand that it's nice to share your spirituality with children and that children want to leave things that have value to them. But more than anything, I wish people would explain clearly to children why this is a bad idea. We have a dearth of education about environmental issues, and honestly, this would be such a perfect teaching moment for all generations. And we're just missing the mark completely. We have to stop being so cavalier with the environment, imagining that our will and available items is good enough as it is, because it really, really isn't good enough. And even the smallest amount of common sense will tell you that. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody should take up spinning and make their own wool if they're going to visit a cluty well or a cluty tree, although I will say, if you suffer from anxiety, spinning, amazing therapy. I don't do it nearly often enough, but I do love it and I feel huge benefit when I make time for it. But if you know you are going to visit a cluty well and want to take something to offer the spirits of the place, have a think about maybe taking something that's 100% natural, some leaves and acorns, spring water, natural jute twine, or something that's easily degradable, some food that wildlife can help dispose of, or maybe something paper. Whatever we bargain with nature, we must understand that we as humanity are on the back foot. We as a species have harmed far more than we have helped in the natural world, and we need to undertake to do no further harm at the very least and help to heal wherever we can. That is the price that we pay to live and work as pagans in nature. Now, a more modern but almost more dangerous urban take on this is the concept of love locks on bridges. I found a few different stories about the origins of this practice, some sadder than others, but what it's morphed into is the idea that by two people in love putting a padlock onto a bridge and throwing the key into the water, it's an energetic piece of magic or good luck. It's not hard to see why, really, I guess. Locks are meant to keep things safe and secure, and by fastening a lock and throwing away the only method of removing it, it feels like keeping your love locked up and safely secured where nothing can harm or sully it. I get it. I really, really do get it. But we need to think about the Pont des Arts in Paris. It has so many love locks attached to it that the weight of them endangered the structural safety of the bridge. The authorities had to remove all of the locks and then clad over the side of the bridge to stop people doing it again, or that bridge could be rendered unsafe. And according to the article that I read when I was looking about it, people are now attempting to fasten love locks to nearby bridges instead. At what point do we understand that our desires are not sensible or sustainable? I was more than a little bit depressed when I realised that a simple Google search for love lock brought up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of results for custom engraved locks. Yes, humanity has once again turned a simple piece of energetic magic into a way to make a whole lot of money and endanger structures. I mean, at least it's not trees this time, but it's not really much, is it? But what could better symbolise our love for each other than mining limited materials, smelting them into steel, engineering the steel into locks, engraving the locks with our initials, and then endangering the structural safety of a bridge with them? How about planting a sodding tree. Hey, do it together. You could collect an acorn on a walk, grow it into a seedling, and then guerrilla plant the seedling in a park somewhere. And then the symbol of your love will continue to grow and shelter other animals and insects and will probably live on long after you and your partner are just your children's happy memories. I mean, personally, I think that sounds way better than a bit of metal that the council's just going to cut off in a couple of years' time. Although, being honest, I do feel some people's relationships are probably quite well symbolised by that. But, you know, we're not going into that. So anyway, that's my rant for today. Cluty trees should not be sites for littering and tying lumps of non-degradable litter, however pretty you think they are when you first tie them on. And love locks are just structurally unhelpful for bridges. Plant a tree instead. The world needs more trees. It does not need more unremovable locksome plastic crap. Right. Okay, so all of that being said, we're now going to move into the positive bit. Here comes the positive bit. So we are moving into autumn. I'm not big into the concept of Mabon. I tend to think that that's one of those sabbats which feels a little forced in order to make the wheel of the year balance. I don't need that to balance for me, so I feel fine with just hunkering down and waiting for Samhain, which is kind of like the big hitter for me on the calendar, frankly. But honestly, I really quite like the random date concept of harvest. I have really happy memories of moving from a city where my son was very, very little into a hugely rural area where harvest was a very big deal. And as a Christian, I used to have a real problem with the concept of harvest being celebrated by bringing tinned goods into church for distribution to the homeless shelter. You know, tinned goods never felt very much like harvest. To me, it always felt like the celebration of feeding the needy, which in my limited understanding of the Bible should not have been limited to just harvest, but should have been happening all year. But anyway, that aside, besides, harvest, in my opinion, should be about, you know, big loaves of bread shaped like wheat sheaves and carrots and potatoes and a punnet of tomatoes from the garden, etc. I remember one of the kids that my son went to school with, and he didn't have parents who grew stuff, and he didn't have the money to buy food to donate, so he went around the village and he collected conkers, so horse chestnuts, to decorate the font with. It was beautiful and it felt really appropriate, I always thought. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff that I love about harvest. It's about canning and preserving things from the garden. It's about baking bread. It's about making soup and eating with friends and going for walks with your scarf on because it's finally got cool enough for it after the frankly blistering summer. I'm very excited to see my two little garden pumpkins continuing to grow a little and turn orange. I'm planning on carving one for Samhain and turning the other one into a very yummy chicken and pumpkin stew that I found the recipe for earlier this year. I might see if I can con my daughter and her partner into accompanying me to a local pumpkin patch to pick up something suitably attractive as well. Unlike many of my more xenophobic countrymen, I'm a huge fan of all of the imported US traditions. Fancy dress Halloween and a pumpkin patch day, out with the hot chocolate and decorative gourd buying. Whoa, two of my highlights of my entire year. I mean, you better believe that, really. I used to be a summer-loving person, but as I've gone through the menopause, I have discovered a very deep and abiding love of autumn because the temperature just suits me so much better. So as we're into September now, I am starting to pack away any summer decorations and I'm getting out some of my more autumnal things now. English shops have finally twigged onto the fact that English people enjoy decorating seasonally too, so the shops are finally full of pumpkins, mushrooms and fallen leaves styled items, and this is a huge relief for me because I used to have to go and visit my adopted mom and pop in Indiana to buy seasonal decorations, and frankly I'm refusing to travel to the US at the moment. I don't think anyone here is in any doubt about my politics, so unlocking my phone at customs would doubtlessly result in me getting turned straight around for more complimentary peanuts and weird chicken casseroles at 30,000 feet, if not being immediately fed to alligators in the Everglades. Anyway, After 5 years of refusing to change my tattered but beloved living room cushions, I finally caved and got some lovely orangey mushroom themed cushions, which make me happy every single time I look at them. Autumn is here, the wheel turns, and I just love that. I'm also working on a little vlog about some autumn pagan things that I do, with some suggestions about how to do the same things yourselves. So I'm shooting that on my iPhone, so it will hopefully be up here as an additional video very shortly, fingers crossed, okay? So finally, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who has sent me messages of support and happiness about my new hearing aids. I spent this week singing for the first time with them, and they are a little weird, but I'm slowly adapting. I did a little research and I found out that the Royal National Institute for the Deaf recommended reading aloud for 30 minutes every day to help the brain adjust to the new sound of my voice. So I've decided to do a little audiobook. I'm reading Charles Leland's Aradia, the Gospel of the Witches, aloud in audiobook format, and putting it up on my Patreon for all levels. Even if you're just supporting me with £1 a month, you can get a free audiobook. How about that? I'm quite enjoying the process, so if anyone wants to suggest any new titles I can do, they do need to be copyright free though, because I'm not going to steal anybody's intellectual property. I'll just make that clear. But get in contact with me. If you're a writer who'd like your book read out, then let me know. I'll be happy to help if I can. It all helps me. So I am going to leave you with a blessing for the week ahead. May the turning of the year cast your sorrows behind you and raise your incoming joys bright and delightful before you. May you have the courage to grasp the things that excite you and the wisdom to let those that do not excite you slide gently away. Blessed be, my cronies.